from an overall market perspective. Apart from that, I also run a venture called Indian Academy of Venture Capital, which is basically a training company which provides curriculum-based venture capital training programs for entrepreneurs and basically prepares founders on how do they go about raising capital to a curriculum-based training approach. So far, I have around 10 years of experience in raising capital. I've worked with brands like JP Morgan, Springboard Ventures, invested money through these funds. Personally, I've worked on transactions totaling more than 200 crores, which I have raised for Indian businesses. I've also worked very closely with incubation centers across the country, predominantly DST funded incubators. And teaching is something which is very close to my heart. So on the weekends, I am at various institutions, colleges, B schools, teaching about the only subject that I know is venture capital, and that is what I talk about. Apart from this, I run a show on CNBC called Startup Nation. Startup Nation is a program focused on startup-related problems and how do companies scale up at an early stage. The show used to run every day from 7 to 7:30 before the lockdown. It used to be a live show. So right now it is on halt. Hopefully post the lockdown, we will get back rolling at the program as well. So that's quickly about myself. And again, many thanks to the IIT Mandi Catalyst team for having me here to speak to you guys on a very interesting topic, which is how do we go about valuing our businesses? How do we go about valuing our early stage startups? You know, what is it that the industry uses? What are the kind of techniques and what are the kind of tools that we use to kind of value our business? And that is what our next 1.5 hours is going to be all about, just focusing on this particular topic of understanding valuations. Before we get into the topic of valuations, let's quickly understand what do we really mean by valuation. What is even the meaning of this term valuation? And to give you a very, I would say, a simple answer to this, and most of you would know about it, is valuation is nothing but 100% worth of a business. So 100% worth of a particular business, a company, is actually what we talk as valuation. And that's what valuation, when we speak the word valuation, it means that the 100% worth of the business, that number which we associate with 100% worth of the company, is predominantly valuation. Now, you would have heard of in your finance classes, or some of you, if you would be dealing with, I would say, finance, then you would have heard of this method called discounted cash flow method. It's a classic method which is used for valuing companies. And every time we talk about valuation, this method comes into picture, discounted cash flow method, where the whole method revolves around discounting the cash that a particular business is going to make from today to the rest of its life, till eternity. Whatever cash flow the company is going to make, whatever net cash, understand there is a difference between profit and cash flows, right? The net cash flow what the company is going to make from today to eternity, till the end of this entire business. What is the value of that cash? We discount it to today and find that value, right? It's a very long method. It's a very technical concept. However, you will be surprised to know that when it comes to startups, we do not use any such bookish methods for valuing companies. These methods, like discounted cash flow method, are very good for old businesses, sizable businesses, having stable cash flows, so that the predictability of cash flows is there, right? I don't know as a startup what is going to happen in the next 6 months. How am I going to project my business for the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? It is going to be a number which is going to be pulled out of thin air. And how do I base my valuation on those future cash flows which I am projecting That is a problem. That is a challenge. And therefore, startups cannot be valued by using the discounted cash flow method. In case if you are using DCF method to value your startup, let me tell you that practically the method is not good for valuing startups because predictability in terms of cash is very low. Forget about predictability in terms of cash. What if you don't have positive cash flows for the next 2 to 3 years, right? In the startup stage, you will not possibly have, you might not always have profitability and stable free cash, in the next 2 to 3 years. So what is happening here is, what do we mean by that? If business is not having positive cash, will it not get valuation? And these are the various problems with use of DCF while calculating the valuation of startups. And because of that, we do not use the classic methods which are used to value large companies. Maybe while doing fundamental analysis, Reliance or a TCS can be valued using discounted cash flow. But a 1, 2 year, 3 year old startup, which is still figuring out its business model, which has not reached steady state numbers in terms of EBITDA cash, which is still growing, where predictability has yet not evolved, DCF is not the right method. Now, the question is then, which is the right method to value companies at an early stage? And I'm going to take you through this method in detail. You're going to understand everything about early stage business valuations. So the method that we use here is called as a transaction comparable method, or what we call as transaction comps. And this is the method which is the investor's choice method when it comes to early stage businesses. Now, what is transaction comparable method? I'm going to take you through it with example in detail by opening Excel, etc. But before that, let's get a 30,000 feet understanding of transaction comparable method. And what transaction comparable method is all about is that I want you to assume that you have to go out for grocery shopping. Now, if you are going out for grocery shopping and if you want to buy potatoes, so you go to a vendor and you check with the vendor, what is the price of buying potatoes? What is the cost of 1 kg of potatoes? Now the vendor will come back and tell you that, oh, it is around 30 rupees per kg. Now, how do you know whether the cost of buying potatoes is actually 30 rupees per kg or not? What is the way in which you get to know whether the cost of buying of potatoes per kg is 30 or not? The only way to verify that is to go to another vendor and check with him that what is the cost of 1 kg of potato. Now, even if that vendor comes back and tells us that it is 30 rupees, then we come to a conclusion that in market, potatoes cost around 30 rupees per kg. That is the conclusion that we are taking. Transaction comparable method is exactly similar to what we just understood. In this method, what we are going to do is we are going to effectively look at similar funded startups. We are going to try and find companies which are similar to us, which are funded, and we are going to study their valuation. We are going to look at their valuation. So I have a business. Let me first find out which are the similar funded companies. I'm going to study the valuations of those companies. Now, after studying the valuations of those companies, I'm going to draw certain inferences. That inference I am going to apply to my company to find out the value of my business. And that is what transaction comparable method is all about. Let me take you through this now in detail by giving you an example of a company called TerraMan. So this is a startup which is in the men's grooming segment. And we are going to find valuation of TerraMan so that you understand how do we go about doing it completely. So TerraMan is a company which is in men's grooming segment. So two founders, Rohan and John, started TerraMan somewhere around April 2019. And what the company does is the company has a range of products which are purely for men's grooming. So They did an analysis. They found in the market that the most of the brands are focused towards women, cosmetics and women-focused products, and the fact that men were actually using women products for taking care of themselves. And that was where this company said that let us launch grooming products for men. The only two brands that comes to our mind when it comes to men's products are Gillette and Old Spice. So there is a huge scope for a new brand. So let's start this company called TerraMan, and let's sell products such as shaving foams, beard wax, beard oils, face wash, body wash, etc. So that's what the company is effectively doing. That is what TerraMan is all about. So men's grooming products is what they launched in the market. Now, what are these products? These products are essentially made from natural elements. More importantly, they do not have any physical store. So what the company has done as a strategy is that they are going only through the online sales channels, such as website, Amazon, Flipkart. So they have their own website and they are selling it on Amazon, Flipkart, Nykaa, etc. So the company is predominantly an online sales channel based company. They are not operational in any physical stores at this point in time. So April 2019, they started this brand and they made it as a pure online only available brand and started selling products focused on men, started advertising on social media and diverting traffic to websites like Amazon, Flipkart, and to their own website, and they started selling more and more products. So 1 year into operations, 1 year into business, what TerraMan actually was able to do was they were able to reach a revenue of 1 crore. So the company was able to reach a revenue of 1 crore. They were able to sell products worth 1 crore, and that is where the company stands today. Current status of the company is 1 crore of sales by selling men's grooming product. Ambition kicks in, and now the founders say that, you know what, we want to now increase the revenue of the company by 10 times to 10 crores in the next year. We are very confident we will be able to achieve this. We can make it happen. The product has found market fit. The founding team is strong. The operations are set. The online channel is already set. Now we have to aspire, or we have to go for a 10x increase in the revenue in the coming year. And that is where they are saying that we can easily do a revenue of 10 crores by 2021, March 2021. And that is what the company is currently looking to do. Now, what is it that the company will have to do to reach that 10 crore revenue? Any thoughts on this? Anyone wants to kind of chip in to share thoughts on this business? If I have to increase my revenue from 1 crore to 10 crore, what are the things that I will have to actually do as a founder to take my business to that level? Anyone wants to kind of comment on this particular business? Any thoughts?
Yeah, hi. So Prashant this side, company would do few things like they would have to do certain distribution setup. They would have to hire more sales reps for partnership at retail points wherever they are selling. Third is they have to increase their spending on platforms like Amazon or Flipkart, and they have to increase their social media spending as well to increase more awareness.
Perfect, right? So if you think of the growth strategy, and thank you so much for bringing these points. If you think of the growth strategy, 3-4 things that they will have to do. One is they will have to increase their inventory, develop new product range. They need to have enough inventory to sell that kind of products in the market. Also, they will have to aggressively spend money on digital marketing channels. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, even on channels like Amazon, etc. They will have to do a lot of paid ads and divert the traffic from various media channels to the place where they are actually selling their products. And that is what they will have to do, aggressive marketing. And most importantly is they will have to hire people for operations. the key pillar for any growth is actually, it starts with people, right? If you don't have the right kind of people to kind of support your operations, then no matter how much you spend or how much you raise money, it does not kind of help the company, right? So they want to hire a few people from the likes of HULs or Gillette, etc., with experience of men's grooming brand, experience of selling brands like this, and that is what they would want to do, support the operations at this point in time. So this is what they would want to do. And for this, to make this happen, they are looking at an investment amount of 3 crores. So the first round of funding is what they are looking at, which is 3 crores. They are saying that from the current 1 crore, if we have to reach a 10 crore revenue number, then we need an investment round of at least 3 crores to kind of make this entire thing possible. And that is the calculation, that the math that the co-founding team has done. Now they go to the market, they are up in the market, and they go and pitch to investors. Two things which are extremely critical from fundraising perspective. One is the founding team background, and second is proof of concept. Both these things are very critical from raising money from investors, which are beyond your network. So your friends, families, possibly your ex-bosses would give you money even without a proof of concept. But whenever you go out to investors, they always ask you a question, that is your idea, is your concept proven? And when we say is your concept proven, which means are there buying customers for your product or service? And that is what the stage Rohan and John have reached. They have clearly exhibited that there is proof of concept and the founding team is strong, and therefore they have a fund called Lion Capital who's interested to invest in the business. Now, Lion Capital is a fund specifically looking at FMCG businesses, and they like this idea and they want to back this particular company by giving them 3 crores of funding. The question that is in their mind is, against 3 crores of investment, how much stake should they be getting? And when this question was asked to the co-founding team, they said that against 3 crores of investment, we are willing to give 10% stake in the business. We are willing to offer you 10% stake in the company. Now, what is the logic for this? There is no logic to this. Rohan and John they just said that, you know what, we are comfortable with 10% stake. There's no math behind it, but for 3 crores, we are comfortable with a 10% stake. Which means what? If you go to analyze this transaction, and this is exactly what Lion Capital did, if you go to analyze this deal that the investors are talking about with the founders, they are saying that if 3 crores means 10%, remember what is valuation? 100% of the company. So 100% of the company is what? And you have to do a simple cross multiplication, and the answer to that 100% is what? Is actually 30 crores. So what is it that the co-founding team is actually looking at? The founders are saying that we are looking at a valuation of 30 crores. We want a valuation of 30 crores, and therefore, for investing 3 crores in the business, we are willing to give you 10% stake in the company. But when the investor asked what is the logic, there is no logic to this. They said that this is what we are comfortable with. Unfortunately, you cannot go this way. Deals cannot happen this way. So what Lion Capital is now going to do is that we need to come up with a justification. Is this 30 crore justified number? Is this the right number? If it is not the right number, what should be the number when it comes to valuation of TerraMan? And that is precisely what Lion Capital is now going to start looking at. And this is where we get into transaction comparable method. The way to kind of gauge whether this valuation is right or wrong, we have to anchor it to certain methods. And that one method that I'm going to talk about today is a transaction comparable method. Now, transaction comparable method starts with the first step. It is finding comparable companies, finding businesses that are similar to ours. And when we go to the market, when we went to the market to find businesses similar to Terraman, we figured out that there are 4 or 5 businesses which are similar to Terraman and which have raised a round of capital. They are of the same size. They have raised first round of capital, etc. And these companies are up in front of your screen. There is a company called Beardo. There is a company called Bombay Shaving Company, The Man Company, Ustra. Now, these are all the different businesses which are currently in the market, which have exactly similar business models to the current company, right? Terraman. So what we have done as first step of our valuation calculation is to find out which are the comparable businesses. And that is what I have written in the Excel. So what I've done is, the first thing that I've done is I have found comparable businesses and I have found their names, right? So Beardo, Man Company, Bombay Shaving Company, and Ustra is what I've written in the Excel. I hope you are able to see the Excel sheet at this point in time when I'm presenting it to you. Can one person just say yes or no? Okay, thank you so much. So this is where the first step is what we have done. Now, the question is, what if you don't have a comparable company? What if you are doing something which is so new that there is no comparable business? So what you have to do in this case is find comparable business models, which means what? If I have a business of, say, delivering food, right, Swiggy, and say I'm the only business in the country today when it comes to delivering food, what I should do is I should compare myself with e-commerce delivery companies. If I'm not finding exactly the same business, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to compare it with similar business models. I guess someone's microphone is on, so requesting everyone to mute. Yeah, thank you. So, for example, when it comes to WhatsApp, now WhatsApp, if valuation has to be done on WhatsApp, we are not going to be able to find similar funded large messaging company which is active to the same extent of WhatsApp. But if you see WhatsApp, what it is finally, it is nothing but a platform where all of us are coming together for social media consumption, right? We are talking to each other and so on and so forth. So if I have to compare the valuation of WhatsApp, if I have to kind of find the valuation of WhatsApp, the comparables that I'm going to use are probably Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. These are the kind of comparable businesses that I'm going to look at. So if you are not able to find exactly similar businesses, what you must do is to find comparable business models. And that is what we are doing in our step 1. So step 1 is find comparable companies. Step 2 is finding the valuation and transaction related data for these comparables, right? We need to find certain data points for these comparable companies. Now, what kind of data points do we need to find? We have to answer 4 simple questions. Who invested in these companies? When did the investor invest in the company? How much was the investment amount? And how much stake did the investor buy? The 4 questions in front of your screen are precisely the ones which we need to ask. Who invested? When did the investor invest? How much was the investment amount? And how much stake did the investor buy? Now, I'm going to go back to the Excel and take you to the step 2. So let's look at this carefully. In Beardo, who invested? Venture capitalists invested. When did they invest? 2016. How much was the investment amount? The investment amount was 3.3 crores. Against the investment amount, how much was the stake offered to the investor? It was 49% stake. Now, these are the 4 questions that we have answered for every company. In Ustra, InfoEdge in 2016 invested 4.9 crores for a 42.3% stake in the business. So we have found out this data for each of our comparables. We've found out this data for each of the company that we found as comparables. The question that you must be having is, where do we get this data? You know, which is the place, what is exactly the place where we get this data? Now, getting this data is not as easy as actually Googling, right? So what you have to do is you have to go to the Registrar of Company ROC website. All our private limited companies are actually governed by Ministry of Corporate Affairs, right? We are regulated by Ministry of Corporate Affairs. So whenever you go in for a new round of funding, whenever you raise a round of funding, there are certain filings, there are certain mandatory things that you have to do with Ministry of Corporate Affairs website, which is ROC. So when I raise a round of capital, it starts with increasing my authorized share capital. It starts with filling up of certain forms such as PAS4. You know, so all there are various filings that you have to do when you raise a round of capital. It is not as easy as going to the investor and the investor transferring money from his bank account to your bank account, company's bank account, right? The story does not end there. We are regulated by ROC, and all of this data has to go to ROC website. So whenever a private limited company raises a round of funding from the investor, it updates that information on the ROC website. Now, you can go to the ROC website, pay a fee of some 100 rupees, and download these filings of any private limited company from the ROC website. All that you have to do is go to the Registrar of Company website, pay a fee, and download the filing of any private limited company. So all these companies who would have raised a round of capital, we went to the ROC website, we downloaded their filings, and we found out this data, right? If you find this to be very, I would say, cumbersome, then what you have to do is there are certain databases such as Crunchbase, Venture Intelligence, VCC Edge, DealCurry, etc. These databases give you this information. All that you have to do is go search the name of the company and the information appears on the screen on these databases. Typically, businesses like us who deal with valuation, who have to do valuation every other day of some company, we subscribe to these databases. There is an annual fee for subscription. You subscribe to these databases, and it is a lot easier to find this data on such databases. So the second way where you can find this information is subscribing to certain databases. At times, Googling also works. However, people are comfortable talking about who invested and how much investment happened. But typically, they are not comfortable talking about how much stake have they bought in the business. You know, that is a very confidential information, right? Now, when IIT Mandi Catalyst invested in companies and came out with a press release, all of us know that, you know, XYZ company got funding, right? How much funding also all of us know. But how much stake actually IIT Mandi Catalyst bought, it's something which they want, you know, an investor and the company would not want to disclose, right? So therefore, this data is at times available on Google, but most of the times this information will not be available through this entire Google portal, right? So to get this data, you have to use ROC website and you have to use certain databases such as Crunchbase, Venture Intelligence, DealCurry, VCC Edge, etc. Right? So the step 2, guys, in understanding valuations and finding valuations for our companies is to go to these websites and find out deal-related data, which is 4 questions: who invested, when did the investment happen, how much was the investment amount, and what percentage stake did the investor buy. Now just focus on column E and column F. If I know how much was the investment amount, and if I know how much percentage stake was bought by the investor, what I actually know is how much was the valuation of the company at that point in time. Because I do a simple cross multiplication. If 3.3 crores means 49% stake, 100% means how much? And that value is 6.6 crores, right? So that is effectively what we found out in this step. In step 2, what is it that we have found out? We have actually found out what was the valuation of the comparable businesses. What valuation did the comparable businesses get, right? This is what we have found out in step 2. Any questions so far before we move on to step 3? Because we will complicate it further. So any clarifications if you have to make, any questions related to step 1 and step 2, please feel free to ask the question. If not, we will move to the next step, which is step 3. So I'm just going to wait for 10 seconds for any questions.
Yeah. So if the competition company has raised multiple rounds, should we consider only last valuation or should we consider multiple valuations in the sheet?
So you
How
can
should we go about it?
consider multiple valuations. See, comparable, if we have to do, if we are raising the first round of funding, then we should ideally compare it with their first round of funding. However, if that first round of funding has happened too back in time, like it has happened in say 2010, then that data does not carry any meaning. Then what we do is we compare to the latest round of funding. So you can take a call basis, all these factors.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah. Great. So let's move on to the third step. And the third step is a very interesting step, guys. What we are going to do is we are going to find the next year revenue number of the company. Now, what do I mean by next year revenue number of the company? Let's say if the investment in a particular business happened in the year 2016, what we are seeing is how much was the revenue of that company in the year 2017. If the investment happened in 2016, what was the revenue of the company in 2017? Basically, what we are trying to find out is the impact of the investment on the next year revenue. When money went into the business, how much revenue did the company end up doing, right? That is what we are effectively wanting to find out. Let's go back to the Excel and let me tell you what exactly I mean by that. What I mean by that is, in the company Beardo, investment happened in the year 2016. Focus on column D. Investment happened in the year 2016. The revenue of the company in 2017 was, focus on column H, 8.4 crores. 8.4 crores was the revenue of the company in the year after 3.3 crores was invested in that particular business. So in 2016, deal happened, 3.3 crores were invested, and in 2017, the revenue of that particular company was 8.4 crores. And this is what we found out, guys, for all the different companies, that once the money went into the business, how much was the impact of that money on the next year revenue. Now, this is where we have calculated the next year revenue of the business. Any questions on this step? Because this is possibly the only confusing step in the entire valuation calculation. Any thoughts on this?
Hi, Vikrant.
Hi.
Hi. In case of product, if the company is still developing the product, for example, in medical sector, so there won't be any revenue next year if funding happens. So how this comes into the picture?
So what happens is maybe, at 4:15, I will be able to clearly answer your question. What exactly do we do in that case? What exactly, if there is no revenue happening in the next year or for the next couple of years, how do we tackle that particular situation from a valuation perspective? I will talk to you about it. I will come back to you about it at around 4:15, 4:20.
Where to find this next year revenue from
Again,
the same ROC MCA?
Yes. So this data, again, you have to find ROC, or the databases. So every time, every year when you do your annual filings, it goes to the ROC website. And then again, I can pay a fee of rupees 100 and download the P&Ls and balance sheets of any private limited company. So, all of us feel that private limited data is actually not disclosed. But on the ROC website, by paying a fee, actually we can get access to the data of any private limited company. That is what that is how things are. And if not ROC website, then the same data is captured in very well tables and very nicely formatted ways in venture intelligence, etc. Right? So that is what we do in terms of finding the data. Great. Now, the fourth step that we are going to do is we are going to find, and you would have heard of this, what we call as the revenue multiple. We are going to find the revenue multiple. Now, let's understand what is a revenue multiple first. Revenue multiple is a matrix for valuation, especially used for early stage businesses. Now, if you trade in stocks, for example, you would have heard of something called as a PE ratio, price to earnings ratio. Price to earnings ratio is a matrix for valuation. What does a PE ratio tell us? Whether the stock is expensive, whether the stock is cheap, how expensive or cheap a particular stock is. It gives us insights about valuation of a particular listed company. Similarly, revenue multiple gives us insights on valuation of early stage businesses. Now, why is it that we consider revenue while valuing companies at an early stage? Why don't we consider EBITDA, or why don't we consider profits while valuing companies at an early stage? The reason why we don't do that, and the reason why we consider revenue multiple and revenue especially, is because in the initial stages, you have yet not reached steady state EBITDA or steady state profitability. We just heard of an example right now where possibly you would not even have revenue, right? Forget about EBITDA and profits. So because it is too early to compare EBITDA and to compare profits, I am plowing back all my whatever I'm making, I'm plowing it back into the business. Also, what is happening is I'm constantly investing in growth. Because of that, my EBITDA margins and my PAT margins are not steady state, which means what? When I'm a large company, say 5 years later, 6 years later, that is when I will be at a 25-30% EBITDA and say 15% profit margins. But currently, I am not in steady state stage. I am still in the growth stage, and therefore you cannot value startups basis profits, basis EBITDA. Yes, what happens is as you move from stages, the valuation matrix changes. So a 8 to 10-year-old company will now be valued by using EBITDA multiple instead of revenue multiple. And a 15-20-year-old listed company is valued on a profit multiple versus an EBITDA or a revenue multiple. So when we say PE ratio, what is PE ratio? Price per share divided by earnings per share. Multiply the numerator and denominator by number of shares, total number of shares. Price per shares into total number of shares is market cap, which is nothing but valuation of the business. And earnings per share into total number of shares is nothing but net profit. So valuation divided by net profit is nothing but profit multiple. EBITDA divided by valuation divided by EBITDA is nothing but EBITDA multiple. And valuation divided by revenue is nothing but revenue multiple. So when we talk about revenue multiple, what is it? It is nothing but valuation divided by the revenue of the company. So if we are a startup, we will be valued using revenue multiple. If we are a 10-15-year-old business with steady state EBITDA, we will be getting valuation basis EBITDA multiple. If we are a large listed company, people would be checking our PE ratio, which is effectively valuation divided by net profit, which is nothing but a profit multiple. Because we are at an early stage, because we have not discovered EBITDA and profitability yet, possibly we have negative EBITDA and negative profits, we have to stick to revenue multiple. And that is why the importance of revenue multiple is so high when it comes to valuation of early stage businesses. So how do we calculate revenue multiple? What I'm going to do is I am going to only divide column G by column H to come up with revenue multiple. And this is what the revenue multiple of these individual deals are. So when the Beardo transaction happened, it happened at a 0.8 times revenue multiple. When the Man Company deal happened, it happened at a 1.3 times revenue multiple. Bombay Shaving Company got a 5 times revenue multiple. So this is what is happening in the market. Deals are happening at a revenue multiple of say 1 to 5 times when it comes to FMCG men's grooming segment. And this is what we are effectively calculating or trying to understand at this point in time. So next step after finding revenue multiple, if we have a bunch of numbers and if we have to find one number, what we do is we take an average. So what I'm going to do in step 5 is simply take an average of the revenue multiples that I've calculated, and on an average, we can say, generally speaking, we can say that transactions in FMCG men's grooming segment have happened historically at a 2 times revenue multiple, at a 2x revenue multiple. And that is what we are commenting at this point in time. Finally, what I mentioned at the beginning, what we are doing is we are going to study the valuations of certain similar businesses. We are going to draw certain inferences. What is that inference that we have drawn? The inference that we have drawn is transactions in FMCG men's grooming happen at a 2 times revenue multiple. Now, this we have to apply it on our business to calculate the valuation of our business. And this is where I take you back to the mathematics of valuation. Revenue multiple equal to valuation divided by next year revenue. What I'm going to do is 2x, which is the average revenue, a multiple is valuation divided by next year revenue. Do you remember what was the next year revenue of TerraMan? It was 10 crores, right? It is a projected revenue number which we have sit down and we have calculated and we have validated and we've seen the assumptions and we are sure or we are okay with the fact that next year TerraMan will make around 10 crores of revenue. So if I put this here in the calculation, in the entire formula, you would get to know that valuation of TerraMan is coming out to 20 crores. Hang on to your questions. I know you would be thinking about certain points at this point in time. What we are saying here is that basis transaction comparable method, basis the transaction or the revenue multiple that we've calculated for the deals happening in the FMCG men's grooming segment, the valuation of TerraMan should be somewhere around 20 crores at this point in time. Now, if you see, if 20 crores is what we are calling as 100% worth of the company, 3 crores of investment would mean how much? And that cross multiplication, if you do, you would come up with a 15% stake. So what we are saying is, according to our transaction comparable method, Lion Capital should be taking up 15% stake in the business. The percentage stake that Lion Capital should take in this business should be somewhere around 15%. And that is what we are coming up to conclusion with. Now, if you go back to where we started from, Rohan and John wanted a valuation of 30 crores. They were looking at a 10% stake for a 3 crore valuation, a 3 crore investment amount. Lion Capital is saying that, hey boss, you know what, according to our calculations, it is 20 crore of valuation and we want 15% stake in the business. Where would the transaction happen? What would end up happening? Any thoughts around this? Anyone wants to kind of comment on this? What would happen in this situation? So in this situation, what would happen is, ideally, two parties will start negotiating. Two parties will say, oh, you know what, you are asking for a 10% stake. We are asking for a 15% stake. Let's settle somewhere in between. Let's look at some other number. So we don't know. So this is where negotiation would ideally begin. However, there is a major problem. There is a major loophole in what we have just done while calculating the 15% stake and a 20 crore valuation. Can you find what that loophole is? Because once you find that loophole, we are going to now get into the next subject, which is deal structuring. How can we structure a deal given this particular situation? So when we studied the transaction comparable method at this point in time, do you see any problem? Do you see any flaw in what we've just done? Any thoughts, any flaw when we went about calculating this 20 crore of valuation? Any idea, any flaw that you can find out in this? Think about it.
Their yearly revenue growth was way too high versus their competition.
Okay. So what are you trying to say then? What do you think?
That in the year when they got funding, and the next year the revenue increase was very little, versus when you in the example when you have moved revenue from 1 CR to 10 CR, other folks revenue moved very little. So the assumption that revenue would go to 10 CR might be an issue.
Totally. And you have, spot on. You have identified the problem precisely. The flaw in this is we are basing our valuation, okay, on something which is on Excel sheet. That 10 crore number, which is a projected revenue number, who knows whether it will happen or not? We might do whatever analysis, we might study all the assumptions, we might go through each and every assumption, all of that we might do. But when you put a number on an Excel sheet, are you 100% sure that this is something which will happen, that this is something which definitely would happen? Because at the end of the day, you are basing your valuation of that 20 crore, whatever we found out, that valuation number is based on the story of 10 crores which has been told to us by founders. And founders will always be optimistic. I would never think that my business will not do great in the next year. I will always, as a founder, think that that business will do very, very good. And I will always find ways to justify that I will do a 10 crore revenue number in the next year. But that is pulled out of thin air. That is something which is just not fair to say that valuation is dependent on a number of an Excel sheet. Tomorrow, which means the game is so simple. If I can prove to the investor that next year I can reach 100 crores revenue and the investor agrees to it, which means what? Is my valuation going to be 200 crores? Is the investor going to give me valuation of 200 crores? Definitely not, right? Because valuation cannot be dependent on a number which is pulled out of thin air, especially which is done by doing some fancy Excel jugglery, right? So we are not comfortable giving a company a valuation basis a 1 year forward revenue number because we don't know whether that is going to happen or not. In this situation, what do we do? What can be done? Any thoughts on any ideas? And we are now getting into a concept called financial engineering, or what we call as deal structuring. So we have to structure a transaction. We have to create a structure in a way that you can actually base valuation on numbers which are not pulled out of thin air. So any thoughts, any ideas in your mind? What can be done? So what we are going to do now is, guys,
Summation.
Sorry?
Yeah. Maybe like just a thought that we can multiply the amount raised with the revenue generated, with the additional revenue generated by company, get a sum and divide it by the total amount raised and create some sort of multiplier for revenue which you can come up with.
Sure. So that can be done. Also, one thing which can be done to remove the dependency of valuation on projected revenue number, and you will be surprised to know this, and you will be surprised when I'm telling you this, that what I'm telling you is that don't raise money in the form of equity, raise money in the form of debt. And you will be surprised to know this, right? Here we are to understand how to value a company and how to raise money from the company in the form of equity. And this person is saying that don't raise money in the form of equity, raise money in the form of debt. Yes, I'm telling you to raise money in the form of debt, but this is a special type of debt. What is this debt all about? So whenever a private company issues a debt instrument to a person, that is called as a debenture. So we are saying, just the way when we are raising money in the form of equity, we issue shares. When you raise money in the form of debt, you issue a debenture. So what I'm saying is, let's go ahead and raise money in the form of a debenture. But that debenture has some special conditions. It's not a normal debenture. We will not charge any coupon or interest rate on that debenture. Imagine. So why would the investor invest if he's not even getting any interest rate? The investor would invest it because we will convert that debenture, we will convert that debt into equity at the end of 1 year. Now, when we convert this debenture into equity after a period of 1 year, how much stake should the investor be getting? The way to calculate it is that what we will do is the stake that the investor will be getting will be dependent on the actual revenue that the company would make 1 year after the investment. What do I mean by that? Let's look at this. Now, what I'm going to do here is TerraMan is going to go to the market and is going to raise 3 crores, not in the form of equity, but in the form of debenture. But they are agreeing to a revenue multiple of 2 times. Now, that is what they are agreeing to. That is what they're saying, that yes, 2x is what we agree to. So the money sits on your balance sheet as loan for a period of 1 year. 1 year later, when the company would actually go ahead and do a revenue number of whatever that amount would be. Let's assume TerraMan goes and actually does a revenue of 10 crores at the end of 1 year. We use that number now, the actual revenue number now, to find the valuation of the company by multiplying that actual 10 crores with revenue multiple of 2x to give us a valuation of 20 crores. And now, once 3 crores of debt gets converted into equity at a valuation of 20 crores, the investment amount gets converted at a stake of 15% in the business. And that is where, after 1 year, 15% stake will be given to the investors, to Lion Capital. So what we are doing is, we are not able to discover the valuation. We don't know how to discover the valuation. What we do is, we fix the revenue multiple. We put the money in the form of debenture. We wait for a year. After the year, basis 1 year revenue, actual revenue number, we convert the debenture into equity and we discover the valuation of the company at that point in time. And this method is called as a compulsorily convertible debenture method, or a CCD method. Right?
I have a doubt. So I have a doubt that you have still put the multiplier as 2.
Yes.
What if the multiplier changes next year? Like in between, or the multiplier would be fixed right now, and the money will be, the equity will be converted next year, or
Yes.
the multiplier will be decided at the end of the year based on the new investments that have happened in the market?
No, because I am giving you the money right now, I have to see, you are already getting the money at this point in time.
Understood.
I'm just converting later. So what we are doing is, we are considering the multiple and fixing it right now. Whatever is the prevailing multiple, and waiting.
Understood.
Right? But even in what we have done right now, there is a major flaw. Can you identify the major flaw? There's a huge flaw. Look at it. What have we done? We have based the valuation on the actual revenue number 1 year later. What flaw is there? What can go wrong in this? Think about it.
If company does more revenue, then investor would get less stake.
Okay, so I would consider first the other side of the end. What if, guys, what if the company ends up doing only 1.5 crores of revenue in the next year? Say the business does not take off the way we were expecting. Say there were certain challenges in the market. Say the business was not on the trajectory of 10 crores. Forget about 10 crores. The business from 1 crore grew only to 1.5 crores. How much would be the valuation of the company now? Can someone tell me? If the revenue multiple is fixed at 2, and if 1.5 crores is the value, is the revenue of the company, the valuation of the company is, guys, 3 crores. Imagine how much is the investment amount? 3 crores. 3 crores of investment amount is getting converted at the valuation of 3 crores. What does that mean? What does that mean? It means you have to give away the entire business to the investor. So what started off by happening was you were getting into deal structuring, into CCD structure, because you wanted to take out the impact of an unknown number, of a projected number which was on Excel. But you have ended up getting into a complete disaster. What if I don't do that revenue number? What if I do only 1.5 crores of revenue? You had started off by giving 10%, 5% stake to the investor, and here you are ending up giving your entire business to the investor. Will you let that happen? Definitely not. On the other side, if the company does phenomenally well, if it does exceedingly well, the valuation would be large. In that case, the investor will end up getting a very, very insignificant stake, very, very small stake, which the investor is not interested in. You tell an investor that against 3 crores, you will get 2% stake in the business. I'm not interested, right? I want some sizable stake in the business. So we went ahead by solving one problem and we ended up getting into another problem. How do we solve this problem? Any thoughts around this? Any ideas?
We'll put upside and downside cap.
Perfect. The way to do it is protect each other on both sides. We create protective nets by putting in a floor and a cap structure, which means what? We decide the revenue multiple, but we also decide the minimum stake that we should be giving to the investor and the maximum stake that the investor should be getting. Let's understand this. Say, for example, we agree for a 2x revenue multiple and we create a range of 10% to 20%. 10% is the floor, 20% is the cap. Consider the company does a revenue of 1.5 crores. How much would be the valuation of the company? 3 crores. How much stake should we be giving to the investors? Actually, 100%. How much stake will we end up giving to the investor? 20%. Because we have set a cap. Consider a scenario where the company does a revenue of 40 crores. Say TerraMan is a very big success. People are ordering left, right, and center. And next year, I am making a revenue of 40 crores. My valuation would be 80 crores. 3 crores on 80 crores will be a very, very minuscule stake. But because I have agreed of 10% of floor, I will end up giving away only 10% stake to the investor, even though I was supposed to give him only 0.8, 0.9, whatever that number is, 0.5 against that investment amount. So the way we capture valuation, see, startup valuation is possibly the most difficult topic when it comes to valuations across the chain of small companies, mid-sized companies, large companies. When as you grow, as the business grows, you start having more and more data. And once you have more and more data, valuation becomes more and more easy. In a startup stage, calculating valuation is the most difficult thing. So to discover the valuation, you have to get into structures such as a CCD structure, which we just saw. Which means what? What have we done? We've just fixed the multiple, we've fixed a floor and cap, and we are going to discover the valuation 1 year later basis the actual revenue number. This is one way. I'm going to tell you one more method, but let's just summarize the CCD method, what we are doing is we are agreeing to 1 year forward revenue multiple. We are setting up floor and cap structure, and we are raising money in the form of a 0% CCD, zero coupon CCD. There is no interest. After 1 year, when you convert your CCD into equity, that is the time when you go about calculating the valuation and offering stake to the investor. Use this only and only if you are confident about achieving the next year revenue number. If you are in a product development stage, if you are in a stage where you don't think revenue can be achieved in the next year, then possibly there is another way in which you can structure a deal. And that another way is what we call as convertible notes. And this is one more convertible instrument that I'm going to talk about today. And that is where this is again a very interesting instrument which startups use while raising money. Now, what is a convertible instrument? Convertible instrument is possibly the most simple way of raising money when it comes to early stage businesses. Here, we don't fix revenue multiple. We don't talk about revenue. Don't forget about next year revenue. Forget about even doing transaction comparable method to find out revenue multiple. Forget about everything. Put the money in the business. If I am an investor investing in the form of convertible note, I would put money in the business and forget it. What I would do is I would not talk about valuation. I would not talk about anything. I would postpone the discovery of the valuation to the next round of funding and peg my valuation, decide my valuation basis the next round of funding valuation. So what I'm doing is, let's look at the same example. TerraMan is going to the market and raising 3 crores in the form of convertible note, which is a kind of a debt instrument. It's a hybrid. What I'm agreeing to is, last time what we did was, we agreed to a 2x revenue multiple. Here I'm agreeing to a discount number, which is 20% discount to the next round of funding. What do I mean by that? Say 18 months later, TerraMan raises 10 crores of investment at a valuation of 50 crores. 18 months later, TerraMan raises a round of 10 crores, and that VC fund gives TerraMan a valuation of 50 crores. So what is going to happen then is, I am going to apply a 20% discount to 50 crores. If I apply 20% discount to 50 crores, the number comes out to 40 crores. Now this 40 crores is my valuation as the first round investor. And I am going to convert my 3 crores at a valuation of 40 crores and take a 7.5% stake in the business. What I have done is, I have postponed the problem of valuation to the next round of funding. I am saying in another 1 year, 1.5 years, there will be more data with the company. Let the next round of funding investor come in and decide the valuation. I am going to take that as the benchmark, put a discount of 20% on that, and then I'm going to effectively take up that as my valuation. This is called as convertible note structure. Now, what if, guys, what if no investor comes in? What if there is no investment happens? In future, 3-4 years, nothing happens. Then we agree to a fallback valuation, which means what? If no investor comes in, there is no next round, after a particular point in time, the debt, the debenture, the convertible instrument, the convertible note gets converted into equity at a very, very low valuation, which means we as an investor end up taking 40 to 50% stake in the business to penalize the business and the founder for not being able to raise a round of capital. When do we use convertible note structure? Use this when you are not confident about the revenue, but you are confident about the next round of funding at a higher valuation. Only then go for a convertible note structure. You have to negotiate the discount. That 20% is not standard. Right now in the market, investors are asking as high discount as 40% to the next round of funding. So it's a negotiated number. It can be anything. Agree to a fallback valuation in case the next round never happens. As I said, use this structure only when you are confident about raising the next round of funding. So exactly at 4:15, I'm answering the question is, if you're not confident about the next revenue, then possibly a convertible note structure is a very good instrument for you, because that you are pegging your valuation to the next round. So there are three ways in which you can do a transaction with the investor. The first way is agree to a valuation, discuss, negotiate valuation, and give stake to the investor upfront. Forget about revenue, everything. Just agree, sit across the table, agree to a number, 3 crores, 15%, close the deal. That's the simplest way. If you are struggling to discover the valuation, if you don't know, how do I even figure out that valuation number? How do I just say that 15%, 3 crores? How do I fix up a logic? If you are not able to build the logic in your mind, then you have two ways to do a deal. The first way is convertible, compulsorily convertible debenture, wherein you are investing into debenture, converting basis a revenue multiple and next year revenue. Do this when you are confident of achieving next year revenue. If you are not, but you are confident of achieving next year, I would say you are confident of raising a round of capital at a higher valuation, then go for a convertible note structure. So this is the way in which actually a deal happens. This is the way we structure a deal. This is the way we decide on valuation using revenue multiple, using CCD, using convertible notes. You would have heard of an accelerator called Y Combinator in Silicon Valley. It's possibly one of the best accelerator programs in the world. Y Combinator use a convertible note structure called SAFE notes. It is called Simple Agreement for Future Equity. That SAFE note is nothing but a convertible note structure. They don't give valuation upfront. They postpone the valuation problem to the next round of funding. So in India, there is a fund called 100x VC who has adapted that and created iSafe notes. Same concept. It's nothing but convertible note. You are basing your valuation on the next round of investment. Because you are not able to calculate valuation, because you are not able to kind of find valuation, you use some structures like what we discussed at this point in time. So startup valuation is not as easy as sitting across the table and finalizing a number and closing it. If you're not able to do that, you use various instruments like a preference share, like a compulsorily convertible debenture, like a convertible note to actually do a transaction. And therefore, this is how we have actually understood the whole concept of valuation. In limited time, this is how I have actually taken you through this entire exercise of finding valuations, calculating valuations, etc. Last 15 minutes is for Q&A. If you have any questions, happy to kind of take these questions, happy to answer these questions. But conceptually, I really hope that you've understood the gist of what I've just spoken to you about. Over to you for questions, guys.
So
How
what
do you
if
float a deal to? Okay, sure. Continue.
yeah, sir, what if a company like an aggregator model who just uses GMV rather than revenue?
So GMV is a way in which businesses were getting valued at a point in time. I would say the GMV has lost its importance from a valuation number. So let's first understand what is GMV. If I am an aggregator and I am selling, so like I'm a Flipkart and I'm selling a Samsung phone for 10,000 rupees. The GMV is 10,000. What Flipkart is actually earning by selling that is maybe a 5% commission on 10,000 rupees. So the actual revenue of Flipkart is 500 rupees on that 10,000. Now, at a point in time, Flipkart was getting valued at 10,000 rupees and a multiple on that. Nowadays, no investor is buying that. They are saying that we will actually value you on your revenue and not on the gross merchandise value. So this is where typically we are at this point in time. The markets have evolved. If it was 2010, 2012, 13, then GMV had huge importance. Today's market, especially this COVID-19 situation, we are going to focus a lot on profitability. We are going to focus a lot on our revenue. And therefore, I would suggest you stick to a revenue multiple over a GMV multiple at this point in time.
Okay, sir, fine. And sir, yeah, a last question. The revenue multiple formula, can you go through once again the revenue multiple formula?
Sure. It's very simple. Any multiple.
Sir, I want to see the Excel sheet. Excel sheet. Yeah. Sir, here in the Excel sheet, the company called, the company is on third number, is making the revenue of around 1.5 crores. The Bombay Saving Company. And the EV, hello?
I'm listening.
And the EV sales is around 5.1x. So why a small revenue making company has greater dependency on the EV sales, like revenue multiple?
So there are multiple softer reasons here. Say the reason why it would have happened was Bombay Shaving Company founders would have been ex-COOs of Gillette, ex-CEOs of possibly Old Spice, coming in and starting the business. So the strength of the co-founding team possibly would have gotten a higher revenue multiple.
Okay.
Or, some other softer aspects would have gotten them a higher revenue multiple. Because till now, I never spoke about the softer elements, right? I never spoke
Yes, sir.
about, the strength of the co-founding team, the market, etc. Right? Now, their business model, their product might be far superior, or the strength of the co-founding team might be far superior from whatever others are in the business at this point in time. And because of that, possibly they would have received a higher revenue multiple over the others.
Okay, sir. Understand. Thank you.
Any more questions, guys?
So Vikrant, there is one question from Food Viram. How does board seat agreement happens in CCD and convertible notes?
So what happens is, typically, when you subscribe to a CCD or when you subscribe to a convertible note structure, you are not holding any shares in the company. So what you do is, just for the namesake, you buy 10 shares in the company, 10 shares or 5 shares or 15 shares in the company. This is predominantly to get all the rights of investors. Basis these rights, you are taking a board seat or you are taking certain rights, given that you are a shareholder. Also, most of the rights we are considering as on converted basis, which means you assume that I have converted this money into equity, and you assume that I'm holding 10% stake in the company. Basis that assumption, you are essentially taking all the rights of an investor. So 2 ways that we do is, we take up 10 shares in the company and get all the shareholders right, like information right, like shareholders meetings. You can take up a board seat. You can take up an observer right. You can have affirmative voting rights. All of those rights can be taken either by taking a very small percentage stake, or and when I say very small, as little as 1 share or a 10 share, or you can consider it as an converted basis. So these are the 2 ways. See, there is you are getting into a contract between 2 parties. The founders, the company, and whoever is giving money, investor, is getting into a contract. Whatever is written in that contract is actually followed. What you do is, you amend the articles of association and memorandum. Basically, you attend the articles of the company. And therefore, even though there are certain conflicts with the Companies Act, you have entered into this agreement with the investor. You've signed a dotted line. You've given these rights to the investor, and therefore you have to abide to these rights. So there are a lot of these, smart legal things which are done by the lawyers to get rights in the company, even though we've not bought shares or even though we have very little shares in the business.
I have one question.
This is Amit from Medsaman. Hello.
Yeah, Amit, go ahead.
Yeah. So I had a question. Like there was an investor who had approached us. Other than all this equity thing which was discussed, he had put in a new thing that he will be also bringing more investment and more connections. So he wanted a sweat equity also, along with the equity which he was taking for the fund which he is giving. So what are your suggestions on this?
So let me tell you first, from a regulatory perspective, okay, and no, I'm not commenting on whether you should go ahead with the particular person or not. Purely from a regulatory perspective, try and understand one thing. You are raising money and issuing shares to one person at say 1,000 rupees per share, and you are giving shares to someone at 0 rupees per share. What is sweat equity basically? It means you're raising money you're giving shares free of cost. Now, how can you do that simultaneously at the same point in time? The regulatory authorities would say, the income tax, Ministry of Corporate Affairs, all of them would come up and ask you, how is it that on one side you are giving shares to someone at 1,000 rupees and on the other side you are giving shares to someone at 0 rupees? Regulatory authorities do not understand that I am giving you advice, against that you are giving me. All of that is not understood by the regulatory authorities. Regulatory authorities understand the math, that money went from one bank account to the company's bank account, shares were bought and shares were transferred to the investor. So if you have to get into a transaction like this, especially when it comes to sweat equity, and especially when you have raised a round of capital or you're raising a round of capital, you have to be very careful from a regulatory standpoint, both from the income tax perspective as well as from the Ministry of Corporate Companies Act perspective. Otherwise, how would you justify? If your company secretary, chartered accountant has found a way to justify this, then you can think of going ahead. If not, see, it is very easy to say that you give me 2% sweat equity. But try and understand, all of us are regulated. Private limited company is not a proprietorship where I can do whatever I feel like. You know, what you are saying, what is the implication of that from a Companies Act perspective? What is the implication of that from an income tax perspective? Understand that first. Get guidance on that first, and then go ahead with any kind of sweat equity, etc. So that is something which you will have to do to kind of, get into transactions like this, especially when you are raising a round of funding. So I would say take advice from your company secretary and chartered accountant, bounce it off with them, understand the implications of this, and then go ahead and do this transaction.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. So Manvin sir, just one doubt. If say you want to structure a CCD deal with multiple investors coming in, and they are not say primarily agreeing on the valuation multiplier, how do we go about it? Like what way company should go, and how do you structure a deal for multiple investors through CCD?
Okay, so see, you have to agree to something. There has to be some anchor, otherwise the deal cannot be done. So in a CCD structure, the anchor is revenue multiple, which means you have to, you have to stick to the revenue multiple. You cannot, not agree on a revenue multiple. If you cannot agree on a revenue multiple, then a CCD structure using revenue multiple cannot be taken up. Then you will have to look at another structure. Maybe if they are not agreeing to a revenue multiple, go for a convertible note kind of a structure. You have to change the method of investment. Second thing is, for multiple investors coming in at one point in time, all of them have to come in at the same terms and at the same valuation. It is very important. You cannot have one deal with one investor at the same time another deal with another investor. We sign one agreement with all the investors. Even when you're raising money in the form of pure equity, you sign a shareholders agreement. Shareholders agreement is not just between the new investor and the company. Shareholders agreement is between all the investors in the business, the company, and the founders. Therefore, I would say, in fundraising especially, I would say the simpler you keep it, the better it is. It has to be understood by even a non-savvy investor. Even a non-savvy person should be able to understand what the deal you are doing. You should be able to explain it to even a non-savvy person. If you are able to do that, that's what you should, aim at doing. So my request to you would be, multiple investors, don't get into multiple deals. Bring them on the same page and keep your structure very, very simple so that your next round of funding becomes easier. Because the next investor should also get a comfort on what you have done previously. So that's my advice to you guys on it.
Sure.
Sir, a last question from my side. What's the best formula for calculating the revenue multiples by considering this soft measurements also? If a person is a non-finance guy, is there any best formula? Because if we can see the example of the Bombay Shaving Company, the revenue is very less, but the amount of revenue multiples is around 5x.
So there is, it cannot be basis only the software aspects. What I would say is that the average revenue multiple is coming out to 2x. Now my company has a patent. My founding team has 10 years experience individually, each of them in the same sector. So if the market is getting 2x, I am commanding a 3x multiple from you. Say, this is how you can justify. Only basing it on software elements that, I should be getting 10x because I have a good team, because I have XYZ is not possible. You have to figure out what is the market multiple. You have to adjust that market multiple. In fact, it can go the other way also. A bunch of people having a very limited experience, first-time entrepreneurs, have not worked anywhere, have no experience of selling a product, come only from product development background. If the market is getting 2x, the investor would say, you know what, these are the risks. I am in fact going ahead and giving you only 1.5x. I'm giving you a discount to the market, right? So these things work on both sides. There is no math to it. Only for a software elements you cannot include it. Both hard elements basis market and software elements can be combined to justify. Understand one thing: as long as two parties agree to a particular number, that is valuation. So if you and I sit across the table and we say that yes, 10 crores is the valuation, and I agree that yes, I agree 10 crores is the valuation, then 10 crores becomes the valuation. No matter what the multiple is, no matter what the revenue is, no matter whether you have started the business, not, etc. However, to come to that level, you need some justification. Not all investors will agree to what you are saying. You have to explain, you have to give justification. And that is what we are talking about, right? Otherwise, you and I can finish the valuation discussion in less than 5 minutes. You say that your company is valued at 10 crores. I say that I agree you're valued at 10 crores, and it's done. It can be as simple as that, So that is what the moral of the story is.
Okay, sir, got it. Thank you.
Vikrant, last two questions. One question is, what is stockholder voting power through super voting stock? Can we achieve this model in which the person will have less shares but control over the decision?
So the answer to that is, even a 2% shareholder if you have given affirmative voting rights or something which is called as veto rights, then even 2% shareholder holding those rights can have control over the board of the company. It all depends on what agreement you have done with the investor. See, this is slightly digressing from our today's agenda of valuation. However, so when we go into agreements, when we discuss term sheets and shareholders agreement, all these points come into picture. The moral of the story, the simple answer to this question is, it all depends on what is the agreement that you have done between the two parties. Even if I'm the 5% holder, and if I've mentioned in the agreement that I will have the right, if I want, to fire the founder of the company as the CEO of the business, and if the founder has agreed to give that right, then I can do it. Otherwise, you would breach the shareholders agreement. So it does not depend purely on what is, it purely depends rather on what is the agreement that you are signing between two parties. And that is what I would, answer on this point.
Okay. One more question. Due to the COVID-19 situation, will valuations of companies who have raised Series A, B, C round will get affected? What are your thoughts?
So, yes. So basically, I'll just try and share. So I've done a complete analysis of COVID-19 on startup ecosystem, fundraising, and especially valuations. So it's a 1.5 hour, actually discussion, but I'll give you a summary of that. Yes, definitely valuations are going to get impacted. Definitely funding is going to be challenging. Definitely, raising money at obnoxiously high valuations is going to be a problem. However, there are ways and means to kind of counter this. One simple way and mean to counter this is, don't agree to a valuation at this. The convertible note structure, like I mentioned, postpone the problem to the next 2 years. The idea is, in the next 2 years, basically, what we can do is, things will settle down hopefully in the next 2 years. We should convince the investor to convert the money at an equity value, which is going to be dependent 2 years later basis the next round of funding. These are the simple tricks and techniques using which you can protect your valuation at this point in time. Are you able to raise money at this point in time? Do you stand a chance of raising money at this point in time in the COVID-19 situation? The answer to that is definitely yes. And how the answer to that is yes, I will just give you 2 numbers. In 2018, venture capital industry in India, VCs invested around $6.5 billion in Indian startups. In 2019, VCs invested around $7.9 billion in startups. If the COVID-19 situation would not have been existed, VCs were set to invest $10 billion in India in 2020, which means what? They had already kept aside, apportioned $10 billion by the start, which is January 2020, kept aside $10 billion. The problem which we have entered is not of liquidity. It's not of dry powder. The problem which we have entered is of uncertainty. Because of uncertainty, $10 billion which was available for 2020 VC investment in India can become, say, $5 billion. 50% even reduction if we consider. It is definitely not going to become zero. If it becomes $5 billion, guys, that means it is around 40,000 crore rupees. If you are looking to raise 100 crores for your business, that is 0.25% of that 40,000 crore rupees. 0.025%. Problem is not about money available in the market. Problem is uncertainty, and that uncertainty is going to lead to what kind of businesses VCs will look at from an investor perspective. The nature of businesses that VCs will invest is going to change. However, if someone says that there are going to be no VC investments happening in 2020, personally, I believe that is not the case. Personally, I believe India will at least have 30 to 40,000 crore rupees of VC investment even in 2020. So that's my analysis of the situation.
Okay, thanks. I think there are no more questions from any of the startup. So I think a great session and lot of insights shared by you, Vikrant. Thanks a lot for sparing your valuable time. And startups are already requesting to have one more session on term sheet and founders agreement. So maybe we'll disturb you again in the coming week.
Definitely. I'm actually missing visiting IIT Mandi. So I hope soon things will get back to normal and we'll actually be able to do face-to-face sessions over
Definitely.
these virtual sessions.
Definitely.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Vikrant. And one more thing, Vikrant, I have recorded this session. So if you don't mind, I will share this with our startup.
Please go ahead and share it. No problem.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Vikrant.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
All startups, thanks for joining. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye. Take care.